All right, so nice Dungeon Dad emblem shows up on the screen with the title, and then we do the introductions. How's it going? This is Chris, aka the Dungeon Dad, and today we are doing an interview with a fellow DM, a fellow player, a fellow enthusiast, and a not so fellow American. Um, Actually, our one of our Canadian players, one of a couple. Allow me to introduce Quinn. Quinn, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of our stereotypical, like we do in session zeros, how you got started, how long you've been playing and DMing, fun fact, all of that.
Yeah, I've been playing D&D since I was 11. Started like in a community. A friend's dad invited all the kids in the neighborhood pretty much to start playing D&D. And then I've been playing continuously since. Like I said, played, all through like elementary school, high school type of stuff. Very much, I think someone had said this recently, and it goes very much as the Stranger Things sort of style of a bunch of kids together playing D&D. And then sort of fell out of it during at the end of high school, and then got back into it just during COVID, like whenever most people in the era of the resurgence of D&D. Always been sort of listening a part of the community, definitely with the Critical Role and Acquisitions Incorporated, sort of always been ear to D&D, but really start playing again, start DMing again during COVID and that era. And then, like I said, wanted to become a player again, and then joined up with Chris there to play in his Monday session, and now I play in the Monday, Tuesday, and Friday session. So yeah, so,
Yeah, definitely participating in quite a few of the campaigns and some of the one
yeah.
shots. So it's been great. We've got to spend quite a bit of time talking about characters, character development, DM styles, the storylines, narratives, world building, all of that. I'd say we've probably spent a solid, outside of the sessions, we've probably spent a solid 8 to 10 hours just talking.
Yeah, yeah.
Outside of the sessions, just, hanging out for 30 minutes or an hour after a session or talking about character development for another campaign, and then that spirals into something else. So I figured, why not? It would be awesome to have you on as kind of the first guest DM
Mhm.
slash guest player to do an interview here. So appreciate you making the time to be able to be here and talk to me about it. So we'll get kind of into the first topic that I wanted to talk about, which was getting started as a DM. I kind of want to go over this topic with any of the DMs that I might interview because it's always interesting to find out during different stages of their development as a player or
Mhm.
introduction to the game, how long it took for them to become a DM or what the reason is, that kind of stuff. So I'll start off first with um, just like a short, if you want to give like a quick answer on why you started DMing in the first place.
Yeah, I started DMing. I did a little bit of DMing when I was a kid, very, very small, because no one else wanted to. And then that's again during that COVID time. A group of friends sent me a message, said, "Hey, we want to start playing D&D again." Um, uh, my nephew is also was also a DM, and so I said, "Hey, you know what? I'll start DMing." One, I at the time I wanted to try it out a little bit more now that I was an adult, and so yeah, I started running games that way, and definitely an interesting from being a child DM, I guess literally a child DM, to being now being an adult. And the difference in like sort of that sort of style of DMing is
Hmm.
definitely an interesting change, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can remember my first time trying to DM. I wouldn't say I was a child, but it was like back towards like late middle school, early high school years.
yeah.
Was one of the first times I tried. uh, again, I got handed down some of the books probably by accident or whatever. Just like, hey, these are cool. You should look at them, and
Yeah.
then it ended up becoming an addiction, and a passion for me. But I can remember that sort of difference and that trial and error between being younger and very much my DM style was very centered around what's going to look the coolest, what's going to seem the coolest to my players.
Yeah.
What makes them think that they're in like Lord of the Rings versus creating an interesting character driven character development style story. So when I was younger, a lot of the campaigns had very little character arc and very little character development for the players. It
Hmm.
was very much focused on what's the next cool thing you can get into. So it's always fun to kind of revisit and come back to that, or, excuse me, take a step back and just kind of look at the difference in how you've kind of grown. All right, so we'll get into what advice would you give someone who's preparing to run their very first D&D session? If they are taking on the mantle of a DM for the first time, or like you, they're getting invited into something where they might step into the role of the DM, like what would happen in your situation and everything. Um, what advice would you have for someone?
Yeah, I thought about this quite a bit, and I think a big advice what I would say, and I think this is the big thing that stops a lot of people from DMing is being nervous about DMing, right?
Hmm.
And I would say just make the leap into it. Um, get a first your first group. Make sure it's a couple of your friends or some people that are quite lenient on the things, but just jump into it.
Yeah.
um, that would be my biggest one. I think I've said this before with when we were talking, is that leap into it and making those mistakes and stuff like that. um, is that your biggest jump into it? Just jump into it, right? Because you know at the first little couple sessions you might not be good at the story, but you'll get into a flow and stuff like that. um, and don't worry about being so prepared about it,
Mm.
because um, your characters are gonna are gonna throw you a couple curveballs anyways. So yeah, is
Yeah.
just jump into it, and on that sort of fact of is just jump into it. And that is a hard thing to say to people, but
Yeah.
it is it is definitely one of those ones where, the most nervous piece is just doing it,
I
right? So
I feel like that advice is it's excellent advice. It's common advice, but it's common because it's the truth, right?
yeah,
Like sometimes people talk about you hear the same things over and over again. Well, that's probably because they work or because they're
yeah,
true. Um, and I can't count the number of times over the last 6 months that I have told somebody that exact same advice. Like, I know you're nervous or it seems daunting, but I'm telling you, just take the leap. Just
yeah,
jump into it and try. And immediately you start to feel more confident or feel better about it. Um, a close friend of mine is talking about starting up a campaign and he's struggling with too much prep work, trying to get everything together, trying to make sure he has every possible scenario accounted for. And we haven't even done a session zero yet. And I'm like, you don't know what your characters really are going to be. You don't know how your players are going to react to things. Really, all you need is that base framework
yeah,
of where your setting takes place, what the overall sort of tone and feeling of the campaign is, and your players will find the story for you. So if you
mhm,
haven't developed every possible scenario, that's fine. You just need an understanding of the area that you're starting in so that if they head in a direction or ask questions, you're ready to sort of improv and go with it. But, we'll get into the improv a little bit later.
yeah. Yeah,
But
it's that tunnel vision that you get,
yeah.
right? I know my first campaign, like my first, not campaign, but my first session, ran a one shot, had so much prep for this one shot, got that big tunnel vision, and then my characters didn't follow any, like,
Hmm.
other than the bare minimum of it. They didn't think so. It was that I was like, oh well, I just prepped for 3 hours. And but that's the lovely thing about D&D is, like, yeah, like, so now, now I know, don't do as much, do
Hmm.
prep work, but don't do as much prep work, because the characters are going to drive that story,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
And I,
yeah.
I think that leads to a common misconception, or at least in my opinion, it's a misconception about a DM and what they do. which is yes, the DM is there to help create a story, but it is a collaborative storytelling experience at around the table. Your players create even more of the story than you do. You just help fill in the blanks when they make their choices, or you talk about what's happening around them as they make these choices. You know what the consequences or the reactions are to these. So it's yeah, it's definitely a fine line between be prepared enough to be able to kind of muck your way through it when the players
Yeah.
make choices, but don't over prepare so that you burn yourself out and you get that tunnel vision like you're talking about, where you're focused on one narrative or one storyline entirely and you're
Yeah.
missing out on other opportunities. Like our campaign, our Monday session that we did,
Yeah.
that was terrific. I kind of tunnel visioned a little bit on getting Zid to the town so that she could meet up with her long lost father,
Yeah.
and we got hung up for an hour and a half at an abandoned hunting lodge that was closed for the season, and it turned into
Yeah.
like a whole ordeal. And I almost missed out on that opportunity because when y'all first started investigating the hunting lodge sitting
Hmm.
empty, I was trying to make it obvious that it was closed for the season and nobody was there on purpose. And
Hmm.
instead, I had to stop myself very quickly and say, no, this is an opportunity for something to arise, or there to be other options or things that could come from it, or at the very least, it'll lead to a good time for the players. So I had to let it play out and let
Yeah.
everyone investigate and all of that. So I almost was guilty of that tunnel vision, like you're talking about, of being like, no,
Yeah.
no, we need to get to the town, and then missed out on an hour and a half's worth of absolutely hilarious situations. Probably one of my favorite situations in that campaign so far,
Yeah.
because it was just such a good time with the ghost baby and everything that happened.
Yeah.
Just to clarify,
It's
there was no real ghost baby; it was an illusion
no.
created. Um, but
It's
yeah,
definitely an interesting thing to think about, that collaborative storytelling and stuff like that, right? So I know we've talked about me doing this new campaign and
hmm
everything like that. And I can even feel myself getting this bit of that tunnel vision on that of like, oh, what's going to happen next? What is the 100 scenarios? I know you talked about your friend, the 100 scenarios that go through your head. What if they do this? What if they do
hmm
that? And I think it is a very daunting thing as a new DM, and even as someone, a new, even new player type of thing, it is definitely daunting about D&D. And
hmm
it doesn't help when you look at, all the DMs
hmm
on the popular DMs, and they do it effortlessly. You look at Chris Perkins and those guys, right? And
yeah.
it's effortlessly, and I think that's, it is scary. It is a scary thing to think
Well,
about. Yeah.
it's funny you bring that up because there's different
Mhm.
scenarios. So I can use two examples to talk about these DMs that make it look so effortless. And I'm not going to take anything away from them. They are both amazing DMs, okay? But you
Yeah.
have two different sides of a coin. You have a Matt Mercer and you have
Yeah.
a Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Yeah.
And not the Brennan Lee Mulligan that is, well, I guess yes, too. Still the Brennan Lee Mulligan that guest DMs for Critical Role in like
Yeah.
Downfall and those Exandria Unlimited stuff that he does. On the one side, you have Matt, who created the world. This was his design and it was his make, much like I did with my world. And I think
Yeah.
that I relate very heavily to him, not in the sense of how good he is or his voices or any of that, but what makes him able to ebb and flow so much with his unpredictable players that are just there having a good time is that this isn't a source book or an adventure book to him. He made it. He knows
Yeah.
the history, the details. He knows that the person they're talking to, he knows what their family looks like. You know what I mean? And even if he
Yeah.
doesn't have it prepared ahead of time, when he gets in that scenario, he can immediately imagine what that family probably looks like because he's so familiar with the world. And that's what I really relate to because I created this homebrew world that we
Yeah.
play out these campaigns in, the ones that you're a part of, as well as some of the other ones that I do. And so when the lore stuff and the narrative stuff comes up, I know I know my world inside and out. So it
Hmm.
makes it easier for me to ebb and flow. And so that is why I go more homebrew instead of like pre-made
Yeah.
campaigns. Then you have the flip side of that coin, which is the Brennan Lee Mulligan style, and Dimension 20 specifically, and then also the Exandria Unlimited stuff he did for Critical Role, is set on a very strict timetable, and they have a set story to play out.
Hmm.
So he gets to provide a lot more rails for his players to follow. So even when they
Hmm.
start to venture and wander, he has that creative way of sort of pushing them back on track to
Yeah.
achieve the actual goal that they're set out to do, because he knows he's got 4 episodes to bring down a city. He's got
Yeah.
20 episodes to complete a storyline that takes place in a fantasy high school. Like, he knows what he's working with, and so that's why
Yeah.
he can effortlessly sort of, so it's very much a product of the environment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so
Yeah.
if you're trying as a new DM to get into it, create an environment that allows you to be comfortable and allows you
Hmm.
to take that leap, like you said, and jump into it. Surround yourself with people you know or your friends or people you can trust and people who understand that you're trying this out for the first time. And that environment will give you the ability to sort of make changes or do things on the fly or go back and even correct mistakes that you've made. So
Yeah.
I think it's very environment based. Anybody can look
Yeah.
like a good DM if you're in the right environment
Yeah.
to a
It
degree.
is definitely easier with friends. I always say it's definitely easier with friends. Like so, to DM for friends. Sometimes there's there's been a couple incidents where it hasn't been not as easy,
Yeah.
but it is definitely easier with friends than strangers. Because it's a little bit more comfortable type of thing. You can make those mistakes and no one gets
Oh
mad at
yeah.
you type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a big thing too is I don't think like you know there's so many one shots out there.
Mhm.
They're so great and they're so simple and so easy because it's already set out for you.
Mhm.
And then it really helps you to do that when you're talking about that guiding piece,
Yeah.
right? They're set out so it can help you guide your members,
Yeah.
into it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there for those one shots and things like that.
yeah,
And running a few of those can really boost your confidence too as a DM. You
yeah,
don't have to start with a full-fledged campaign or even a short form campaign. Doing a one shot that, let's be honest, they call them one shots, but they usually turn into 2 or 3 sessions to
yeah,
complete. Or you get as far as you can with the one session you have. But yeah, playing with friends is definitely the advice that I would give if you have it available to you. Sometimes you don't
yeah,
have a group of friends that have interest in D&D, so you got to venture out. Um, the next step I say for people is find whatever your local gaming store is, like tabletop hobbyist gaming store is, because most of the time the people that go in there and play in the back room, and where the tables
mhm,
are and play and stuff and everything, they are there for the socialization. So they're usually very nice. They're usually you're not going to run into many of the horror
yeah,
stories of like people being terrible players or terrible DMs in those kind of situations, because most of the time they're playing in a public place like that because they want to meet and have fun with other people. So th- most of your horror stories are going to come from those situations, in my opinion, where you have that friend that wants to get into it or is into it and
yeah,
invites you to come to their group of people you don't know, and
yeah,
then you get there and you don't fit in at all. That's when people have a bad experience, in my opinion.
yeah.
So,
Another thing too, and like we, at least with our community and stuff like that, asking other DMs if they want to be players, right?
hmm
And I think that's another great thing for definitely newer DMs is ask a DM if he wants to be a player or she wants to be a player
hmm
or they want to be a player. Is probably the easiest because I don't know a DM that doesn't want to be a player,
they all do.
right? It's,
They all
yeah,
do. Even the ones that are
yeah,
like, no, I'm happy being a forever DM. It's what I like to
yeah,
do. They're not going to turn down an opportunity to be a player in a one shot. Maybe they don't want
yeah.
to be a campaign player, but they'll do a one shot.
Yeah. And then you have a source of knowledge too that you can,
Mm,
go back on too, right? So, when I started out, I had my nephew, he had been DMing for such a long time, wanted just to be a player and but knew all the rules, knew everything like that,
yeah.
knew all that piece. played on we were playing on Roll 20 and like knew how to use Roll 20, which
Hmm.
is I know from going from pen and paper to a computer system was definitely a big jump for me.
Yeah,
Um, and and then like having that sort of person to help guide you is definitely a really good thing. And
for
like I
sure.
said, I bet you if you go to any hobby store or anything like that, any community, and you go to the DM there and go, hey, I'm thinking about running a one shot. Do you want to be a player in it?
Hmm.
I'm sure they're going to jump on the chance, right? So,
And generally speaking, DMs as players are really good at recognizing that stumbling block or that awkward moment or that awkward
yeah,
silence and sort of taking the initiative to help get past it. If
yeah,
you, as the DM, get hung up on, like you've presented a series of choices or options or directions that they could go, and nobody else at the table speaking, usually the DM that's playing will be the
yeah,
first one to step up and be like, okay, well, maybe we should do this. Hey, group, what do you think? Hey,
yeah.
or they'll start role playing it out. Um, so it's very helpful for a lot of reasons. So I would
Mhm.
agree. So that brings me to talking about the stepping into the world of being a DM. Looking back, what advice would you give your earlier self, or what do you wish that you would have known going into that DMing for your first one shot or your first, part of a first session of a campaign or whatever? What's the main advice you would give your younger self?
Oh, yeah. Good characters, like especially for homebrew stuff.
Mm,
Really, really good. Like, don't if you're gonna spend all your time on anything,
mm-hmm.
spend your time with your characters that are people are going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Squirm.
because yeah, because they will ask you questions that you do not think that no one is going like questions that you will not think that anyone's going to ask, and you got to know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to know, but you have to at least have some idea of what that character is going to say back,
Right,
right?
right.
So,
You got to
you
know enough about them to at least be able to
yeah,
make something up on the spot.
yeah, because your bartender who's just serving drinks is going to get asked something,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't have a backstory on him or anything like that, that is going to be one stumbling block.
Yeah.
That is a huge that we've talked about times where it's kind of you're taken aback and stuff like that as a
Yeah.
DM, you know, like full on 20-minute conversation with the bartender
Yeah.
behind
Like
the thing.
literally the big bad guy for this whole arc of the story is sitting in the corner, but you don't care
Yeah,
about him. You want to know about Schmebula, the bartender that's working there right now, and that's
yeah,
that's who your players will focus on.
yeah.
So I agree 100%, and my advice for that is I have a spreadsheet, if you will, of first names, last names,
Mhm.
titles, and like potential bullet point like pieces of backstory to just basically draw from a hat so that when
Yeah,
I say, oh yeah, somebody bumps your shoulders, walks past you in a crowded street, it's meant to provide atmosphere of like, oh, you're
mhm.
walking down a crowded street. But then the player decides, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to be like, hey, you, what's your name? What are you doing bumping into me? And they're going to have like a whole conversation with this NPC that was literally just meant to be atmospheric flavor.
Yeah,
So I can look over at this list and be like, oh yeah, it's first name, last name, or it's just first name, or it's just title, or whatever. But I have something to work off of because if I'm having to make up character names on the spot, they're all going to be named Kevin
yeah.
because I just
I think
I can't come up with them on the spot.
yeah, I have a bad, and I think I've talked to you this before. I have a bad habit of naming every male bartender Charles. Like
Hmm.
that's just because it's a thing now.
Quinn's
But
universe is like the Pokemon universe where every officer is Jenny and every nurse is Joy and every
yeah,
bartender is Charles.
Charles, yeah. But I know sometimes I have when I DM, I tend to have a random name generator
Hmm.
going on the thing, and then I always think of and then I have a background in my mind of like people that I've met in my life, right? And then I'll just throw those in there with
Hmm.
their idioms and stuff like that. use the name generator, throw it in there, right? So,
The other note I have for that for aspiring DMs is if you have to create, pull from a hat, random generation, whatever, take notes
oh
because
yeah,
you may bring it up on the spot to never remember it again, but your players will.
yeah,
16 sessions later, they'll flip back to their notes and be like, "Oh, is this person related to this person we met in this other town?" And then you have to know the answer to that. Either make it up on the spot or because there are consequences. The DM narrates the reactions and consequences of player choices. When the DM makes choices, those consequences radiate throughout your world or your
yeah.
town or whatever it is that you're playing in, no matter how big or small. Your
Mhm.
players will have an uncanny ability to remember those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes that's the good thing about running pre-made campaigns
mm-hmm,
too, is it's already set out for you. So it's kind of nice a lot of the work isn't there, right? You don't
right.
under the homebrew comparative to, pre-made campaigns. The pre-made
Mm-hmm.
campaigns, the great thing is, Wizard of the West Coast has already named everyone for you. So, right? So, and at
Yeah,
least gave you a little bit of a piece about them, right?
yeah.
So,
They generally give you the name and like a physical description or an image,
yeah.
and then like just a little piece of information, like oh, they're a surly bartender that doesn't like their job or whatever, and that's on purpose. It's to give you information on how to play that character as the DM. So
Yeah.
yeah, that I'd say that is a big benefit for that. So if, like you said, if you're going to put prep time into anything going into your
Yeah.
first session, I would say put prep time into having that same kind of bullet point information about NPCs that you know you want to introduce.
Yeah.
I have a habit with mine of in imposing my own characters that I've created for other games or sessions, or just because I thought they would make cool characters. I make them NPCs in my world. And that is
Mhm.
because I have full fleshed out backstories for them. I know about them. I know their personality and how they'll think. So if I know that my party's going to meet an important NPC, that whether they're good or bad, it's easier for me to put my own characters in that place. So
Yeah.
um, Squirm is a play on one of my characters that I had. Um, Trying to think who else you met. The Lord Protector, Denathan.
Yeah.
That's that was one of my. He was like a retired ranger. Um,
Nice.
a character that I played that was brought out of retirement for the campaign that he was supposed to be in. Vrick is one of my. I'm playing him in Witchlight, but he's
Yeah.
one of the characters that's also been an NPC in several other situations for my in-person group or the online campaigns. So I tend to insert them for the same reasons you talked about.
Mhm.
Because if someone asks me the questions I'm not expecting, I
Yeah.
know like I feel like I have a confident understanding of who they are as a character to be able to answer those questions.
Mhm.
So that's great. So then let me ask you, what were some mistakes that you made early on that
Oh,
perhaps other people watching can learn from?
lots, honestly, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Not planning enough was a good one
Mm.
too. I've done a couple sessions where, um, not, and like I said, we talk about not over planning, but not planning at all is
Mm-hmm.
also bad. Uh, it
Yeah.
kind of sucks for a player when you're like, hey, wait 1 second, I just got to go make all my battle maps like within this 2 minute type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, or like not reading my one shots all the way through and then being like, oh, okay, where, you know, oops,
Yeah, that's a big one where
yeah,
the ending can be very heavily affected by choices made early on in the one shot, and you don't
yeah,
realize that because you didn't read it all the way through. So when your group decided to get in a fight with that random bartender who was
yeah,
listed out in the book, and then they turn out to be the person that's supposed to help the group at the end, well, they wouldn't because they had an altercation. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to help the group now. So now how do you overcome that?
yeah.
So that can be a big one.
Yeah, that, and like I said, that was I think at the start of my whole thing is like really not, coming into camp, like into sessions and not having that enough. prepared was a big, accident of mine starting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then another one is just not, and like we said, not understanding my characters in my world either, right? Or trying to be both with the players and both with the NPCs. With the player pieces, not understanding like they're gonna wreck everything that
Mm-hmm.
you've carefully planned out, right?
Right.
So let them do it a little bit and kind of guide them along, and don't get too worried and hung up. Like if the the giant lizard starts collecting every rock in the street,
Yeah.
you know, like so, let it happen because
Yeah.
that's the characters having fun, but just kind of guiding them into something else
Yeah.
and not get worried and upset about it. And then on the opposite side is, like I said, having that, bartender that, they walk up to the bartender and you're like, oh, it's Charles again.
Yeah.
Like,
He jumps around a lot.
yeah, yeah. So,
Um, yeah, I just want to make a quick mention, just a random scenario you just brought up, but like my DM brain always kind of does that. You said the giant lizard character that is collecting all the rocks in the street. Um,
mhm,
you look for things like that when you gain more experience as a DM, I believe,
yeah,
because that is a way to turn things back in the right direction. It's the simple things where, oh, I know my giant lizard character, the player, likes for him to collect rocks. I
mhm,
need them to go in this other direction to find the missing piece that they're looking for this narrative that they really want to complete.
yeah,
How I don't want to tell them to go that way or just narrate that they go that way against their own choices. So I'll lay out some pieces of candy. I'll lay out some rocks, some
mhm,
very shiny, very valuable looking rocks that lead slowly, not just like a trail of them, but there's like one over
mhm,
there, and then they're like, "Oh, are there any more?" Make a perception check, make an investigation check, whatever it is, and you can be like, "Yeah, in the distance, it looks like there might be another one further down the street." And it's a very crude example, but there are ways to utilize your players themselves and their behaviors to get them back on track,
yeah,
because there's there's a saying, and I'm pretty sure it was Brennan Lee Mulligan who said it, and I resonated with it so well. And he said that him as the player and him as the character are at odds with each other,
mhm,
because him as the character wants to see the bad thing at the end of the tunnel and wants to get there and beat it and solve the problem as quickly and efficiently as possible. But him as the player is going to be really pissed off if he takes a straight line there,
yeah,
because he wants the story. He wants the winds and the turns and to go in all the directions. But he's at odds with his character who wants to get there. So creating a scenario in which the characters feel like they're accomplishing something and the players feel like they got to experience a full story is kind of the primary focus of how a DM can help with that. So let them,
yeah,
as you said, let them ask those questions, go those directions, collect the rocks, make the mistakes, and
mhm,
use that to continue their characters toward achieving the goal that they want to do. So
yeah.
that was just like a quick little one off that I had there.
Yeah, like so at least in that campaign, like to get that character really focused or that player really focused back onto track type of thing,
Mm,
you know, definitely use like, hey, like, the the treasure that was 16 pieces of gold was 16 pieces gold in a sunstone, right? Like
right.
so at least it gives that character that, my whole character arc is collecting rocks. Well, oh my goodness, there's a big shiny rock,
Yep.
right?
Right
So
at the end, I get a big shiny rock.
big
That's
shiny rock.
awesome.
Yeah. So.
And then, of course, you have other characters who are like, I don't know. Like in the Tuesday campaign, we have some newer players, and one of them specifically was like, for backstory, it was just like, yeah, I think he comes from here. He doesn't really know who his family is. He's just been over here the whole time, and I don't really know personality wise what I want to do with him. So I was like, cool. All right. So episode one, or session one of
Mhm.
your campaign, I'm gonna slap you with a curse.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out who your character is because you're gonna work through his worst scenario from the beginning, and he'll come out of it with an arc. And it's
Hmm.
not for any other reason other than for you to realize who your character is. It's to help
Hmm.
you along that path. And by session three, he is taken off with it. He is
Yeah.
embodying this character. He knows how he would react. The last session we did, there was like somebody else there that was clearly cursed, and everybody was like, "Oh, we don't want to go near him." And his character was like, "Screw it. I'm already cursed, so I'm just gonna go up and do it. I'm just gonna go interact with this person." And I was like, "Yes, that is your character establishing how they think and what they would do in these situations,
Mhm.
and it's awesome. It is awesome to see. So
It,
use those little nuances of your
yeah.
players.
I think we said before the characters will, like the players will give you a lot of storyline, right? And we said this at the start of our talks is like you're as a DM, you're there as a guide, right?
Hmm.
This is right. This is the way to go. This is the way to go, right? So, um, I think if you're too, I think we've both played with too overly structured
Hmm.
DMs, and sometimes it makes it really hard to get enjoyment as a player, right? So,
That's one of the things I've had to find myself resetting with a lot of the players in these campaigns and stuff and everything is the ones that do have experience seem so used to playing with someone who has one story. It's like they strung together a series of one shots,
mhm,
or they just expanded a one shot so it has one story. So one of my favorite things to do after session one, session two is to be like, okay, there are now 8 storylines open to your group.
mhm,
Like in the wrap up after the session, I'll be like, hey, great session. You guys did great. You opened 8 new storylines. And then session two, it's like you opened 4 more. And their eyes always get wide and they're always like, what do you mean? We
yeah,
have player agency. We can choose which story we want to follow. And I'm like, yes. And I explain it in the session zero, and then I explain it from there on out too. When we start, I have a very short narrative that
mhm,
brings you together as a group and gives you a reason to be together. From
mhm,
there on, after session one, session two, sometimes session three, it's your choice. You can go to a different city, you can go in a different direction, you can go to a different continent.
yeah,
It is y'all's choice because I feel I've done the prep work to be ready for them to go wherever they want to go.
yeah,
And also, if you feel you're not prepared because they're going somewhere that you're not ready for, you can turn travel into a really long time. And end the session
yeah,
with them arriving at the new place, and then you get between then and the next session to prep the new
yeah.
place. So,
And
um, go
that's the
ahead.
benefits of going homebrew over like when we talk about homebrew
Mm,
over written campaigns, right?
yeah.
But the great thing about homebrew is the characters can go wild, right?
Mm.
It's your homebrew, right? And then, but at least with the campaigns ones, you gotta be a little bit more, right? So
Yeah,
I
imagine Curse of Strahd and they never go to the tower or to the castle. You know what I mean? They just
yeah,
never make it there.
would never make it there. It'd be really funny though.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Uh, so then it was like, oh, we're bringing in the introduction of AI to everything. So now you can have AI that generates not just a random NPC name, but they'll give you a paragraph of backstory, like on the fly. I don't have any of those that I subscribe to, so I can't speak to the validity of them or the usefulness of them or like how it works really.
yeah.
Um, but I do. I have for my I installed the Google Chrome extension
Hmm.
for the random NPC name generator
Yeah,
because it will do like NPCs, towns, store names, and shop names and stuff like that. And so when I was creating my table that I choose from, I was just like shuffle. All right, write that one down. Shuffle, write that one down. And then I just went through each name
yeah,
and just created a list of like 50 first names, 50 last names, 50 shop names to be able to pull from for like those one offs that don't have any real relevance to the story I'm
yeah.
trying to tell. So there are a lot of tools out there.
Yeah,
So,
tons of tools out there. I can speak to a little bit of the AI because I use it quite a bit.
yeah.
Um, the it's a great resource for um, what it is, right? So it's a robot, so you got to think about that. But like for hitting those little backstory pieces for the
He didn't mean it, AI. When you take
yeah,
over, we're still on your
sorry,
side.
yeah, sorry, Mr. Robot. Uh, it is really great for those filling in those other pieces. The surly bartender behind the thing
Yeah.
that has a, I want him to have a bit more of a backstory. So
Hmm.
I want his, his wife to leave him. Can you give me a reason why his wife left him?
Yeah.
Boom, right? There we go.
Yeah. It could just
So,
reach out and find something else that was like an example or other
yeah.
situations, and then it spits that out for you.
Yeah, it's really, really nice to add those. It makes things quicker, right? So,
Sure.
and that's the piece of it. Yeah. Working on the campaign right now, and I need names for every, colonel in the army, right?
Yeah.
Boom, like gave me every name for every colonel in the army and a brief piece on them, right? So
Right.
my characters will may never ever come in contact with these people, but at least then I have it quickly, right? So
I know there's, and this might get a bit controversial. I know there's some diehards out there that say that real DMs don't use AI for anything, and it's not creativity, and you're not doing it yourself, and all of that. Um, I think, and this is I want to preface, this is my personal
yeah.
opinion, and I don't believe it's right or wrong. It's just my opinion. Um, I believe that the use of AI in those situations to handle minuscule, non important tasks is, in fact, making me a better DM.
Hmm.
Because if I don't spend an hour generating random NPCs out of my brain, that is an hour I can put into my prep time for the actual story that matters or the actual character development of
Yeah.
NPCs that I know for a fact I'm going to introduce to my party in one way or another. I'm not worried if I have to spend 15 minutes developing a character they might bump into. It's 15 minutes I can't put into how can I make this better for the actual players.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of DMs, again, the response to that is going to be, well, just don't spend the 15 minutes either way, like on developing them. Just make it up on the spot. Not all of us are that good at making things up on the spot. We play campaigns in a world that I created from the ground up. I have basically written a like almost 5,000 page at this point book on the history of this world, not to mention what's happening in the current time and what all my campaigns are going through and the different narratives and storylines they're all following. I know this world inside and out, but my mind freezes and locks up if I don't have an answer for something right away.
Yeah.
And it's not because of anxiety or anything like that. It's just because my when I'm in that flow state of DMing, I'm thinking about everything going on around them. I'm not thinking about what Joe they met on the street does in his spare time. And so when your players ask that question, I could sit here and stumble over it and create a very non memorable experience for my characters where they're like,
Mhm.
wow, he really struggled with that. Or let's move on. We don't care about that. Or I could have used AI to develop a very, very small snippet about this character where they're going to be like, hey, you remember Joe and Valir? He was pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
we met him at the bakery. Remember that guy? Um, so I feel like it makes me a little bit better of a DM. Now, I'm not saying use AI to write your entire campaign,
No.
to build your entire world, to write your whole narrative and your whole story. That needs to come from your characters. That needs to
Yeah.
come from their choices, their backstories, and then you build around that and include it. That's what makes it feel like an immersive and including story to them and makes them
Mhm.
take interest in it and have investment in it, is because it's personal to them. So I can see both sides of the argument, but I think if you're using AI to fill in those little gaps, it can free up your time and your ability to work on the more important things for
Yeah.
your. And I know that this, if for any reason this video gets more than 3 views, somebody's going to disagree with me in the comments.
Yeah.
I get that. I understand, and I am not saying that your opinion on AI is not valid. Everyone has their own opinion on it. For those of you that
Yeah.
are in the comments right now saying like using AI is cheating, you're not a real DM. I get it. I understand your argument on that. On the same time, I'm here to give my players the best time possible, and I
Yeah.
feel like I can do that better if I'm not trying to handle all the smaller tasks that I can just have. It's like having a co-DM. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I get it, but like and I'm gonna play devil's advocate to this, and I'm gonna say to the commenters, like, so you don't use source books, like,
That's a very good point. Didn't think about that. All right, moving on.
I'm joking about
No,
that
but I mean,
anyway.
but it's good though. It's a solid point of
Yeah,
view.
just laugh because I remember as a kid, every DM as a kid, especially in the times of things, had Dritz in their campaign somewhere,
Yeah,
in their homebrew campaign, right? So this is
yeah. It was
yeah,
somewhere. Yep. Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that brings me to kind of the next section, which is flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So, first off, how important is improv as a DM? And the second part of that is, can you give an example of a time that things went off the rails in a good way, where improv like paid off?
Yeah, a completely favorite story is DMing stories. Running a I was running like I was running it in my homebrew campaign, but it was just a small one shot piece. It was only supposed to be a little bit. Had the characters, come in, and they were just supposed to come across a like they're tracking down these orcs.
Hmm.
Um, um, that were like wrestlers. It was a very weird campaign in the A realm, but
Like mud wrestlers? Like no,
like
Jello
luchador,
wrestlers.
but
I got you.
yeah, luchador style wrestlers,
Oh, okay.
and
Like, yeah.
they come across like a campsite that has been like recently used. Someone had made breakfast, and there was still grease on the like pan of the breakfast thing. This is also someone just going being like, hey, what is on the fire, what is this, and me having to be like, oh shit, this is you're not going right straight to the next piece, right?
Yeah.
um
Oh, I
so
found a
ended up
clue. Let me look further and see if there are more clues.
yeah, so it happened to be like a piece like, oh, what did they have for, they left it in a hurry, what did they have for breakfast,
Hmm.
oh, okay, they must have had bacon because there's grease on this piece, right?
Yeah.
And so the one person was like, "No, I'm going to collect all the grease from. I have vials, empty vials. I'm going to collect all the grease from the pan, right?"
Hmm.
So they go into their next piece, like go into the next scenario. They come up against these orcs that are all luchadors, everything like that, and then they come up, the big bad, orc chieftain says, "Hey, we're gonna wrestle, right?" So I had made up a whole wrestling sort of piece to
I
it,
remember
right?
this now. At first, I was like, I
Yeah,
don't remember this, but now I remember it.
yeah. And so one of the other characters goes, "Hey," the guy that collected the things goes, "We're gonna rub up our barbarian with the bacon grease." And I was like, "Holy crap, that is totally off the rails. Like I didn't think this would happen."
But it's so
And
smart.
it's so smart, and so I had to quickly go like, okay, what's gonna happen now that this guy's greased up, and it gave him. I said, well, it has to give him an advantage. So definitely something that went off the rails. Had to quickly be flexible with it.
Yeah.
Had to remake my whole like had a big chart on if they roll this and they roll this to like what moves they do, wrestling moves they do, and had to rejig that all around because now my barbarian is completely in a loincloth and greased up completely.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
He out there flexing on them.
yeah.
Uh,
So definitely
it's
one of my favorite moments to be like, oh my goodness, because it was so, there was other things that has happened, but it was so simple and
mhm.
such a thing that took me by surprise, right?
Right.
So, mhm.
You place anything out there, your players will find a way to utilize it or make it crazy, for sure.
Yeah,
Like they're always going to. Squirm was completely improv.
yeah,
When y'all first got to the Veiled Vault, I just had that it was like a kobold community, an underground kobold community. Whiptail was the only one that I had actually fleshed out, because he was the only one y'all were really intended to interact with. But then the first kobold y'all that approached y'all when y'all entered was supposed to just be like, "You're not supposed to be here." And then everybody was like, "Who's this? You know, what do you do here?" But so I had to come up with Squirm.
Yeah.
And then 3 sessions later, I had to kill him. And when then the beginning of that session, everybody woke up, and Ollie was like, "I don't like wake up to Squirm like breathing
Yeah.
heavily, standing over me after we left the city." And so that whole series of events was nowhere in my notes of waking up, seeing Squirm on the horizon, him collapsing, him being hurt. It also introduced a new part of the storyline with the Veld Vault being attacked after y'all left because these people are hot on your heels. And so the Veld Vault suffered the consequences of y'all deciding to go there to hide. And so it created that whole storyline. And everybody was crying when Squirm
Yeah.
died. And so something that was an improv moment of like, oh, you met this kobold, I named him Squirm, and he has a thing for Ollie. And then turning around 2, 3 sessions later and killing him off, and that has everyone, literally everyone in the call crying.
Yeah.
I was like, these are the moments you cannot prep for and plan for as a DM.
Yeah.
So,
And that really speaks to that flexibility as a DM. You have to be a bit flexible, right? Even in, like I said, like I even in like one shots or even campaign or written campaigns, right? So that little bit of flexibility
mm-hmm.
to, yeah, it says in that character arc that, Lord Trask is a stuck up person and everything like that. Well, if your, Bard is, playing that sort of piece, right? Having that flexibility, okay, play that a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So giving that
exactly.
characters a little bit of fun to do it. Like go with, as I said, go back to the original thing is guiding, but
Yeah.
not overdoing it.
So, with that flexibility in improv, do you have any tips or anything for getting better at like thinking on your feet during a session or creating those moments?
It's very scary at the start.
Yeah.
Like I said, and if you're not used to it and you don't come from a background of improv or anything like that, it is definitely very scary at the start. And be okay with stumbling a little bit, right? So,
Yeah.
um, being okay with stumbling a little bit, like so, and and everyone does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, thus again, we go back to definitely play with people that you think that it will be okay with you stumbling a little bit.
Yeah.
And, not every character that you do or that not every flexible decision that you make is going to be the best one either. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just being okay with that little bit of flexibility and just okay with trying to run with it as best as possible, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, like I said, be players, right? So,
Yeah.
be a player, right? As much as you're as a DM, if you're think back of what it is like to be a player on that opposite side, right? On
Mm-hmm.
that is a big one, right? So,
Yeah.
I know when I started out during COVID, I hadn't been a player very much, and like I said, now coming back to being a player, and then coming back now going back to being a DM again, right, has definitely opened my eyes on going, oh shoot, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, because giving you that time chance to improv a bit and stuff, right? So,
It definitely builds
yeah,
the chops because being a player, your DM's constantly presenting you with choices, and you have to
yeah,
be, okay, in character, my character would probably make this choice or that choice or
mhm,
say this. So it definitely beefs up the chops for sure. So I got to know when you hit these improv moments, when you get like the grease thing, when you get met with a choice,
mhm.
what's your go-to trick for stalling when you need a second to think? Is it like, oh, need a bathroom break, or like when you really need to figure something out and you can't just do it on the fly? What's your go-to trick?
um I haven't been in this situation in a while, right? So like I said, I've been back at as being a player for so long now. Um, but I think my biggest thing was just give more to the characters. Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, what does the other characters think about that, right? And then
Mhm.
gives me time for the characters, like give the characters the Ionis to make decisions. Um, because then it gives me time to be like, okay, shit.
Yeah,
You know, if they're when they're talking, I can go like, okay, like that bartender is now not going to be this way. Let me quickly put this up, right? And
yeah,
of course, the characters are going to talk and talk through things and stuff like that, right?
yeah.
So,
You
you
hope.
know,
Sometimes you have a quiet group.
and I think that's the big one too is if you need to stall for time, put the shiny coin at the bottom of the barrel, right?
Hmm.
So,
And if you
like,
really need time, glue it to the bottom of the barrel.
bottom of the barrel,
Let
yeah,
let them figure out how to get it
yeah,
out.
yeah. Do a
Um,
sleight of hand check. Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, you
having them
failed the spell.
rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tips and tools for running games smoothly. So, what tools or resources do you always use when running a game? Digital, physical, doesn't matter. What is the go-to tool? Like if you're the actor or the musician, right? You're the talent. In the backstage room, you always got to have your green M&Ms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before you go out to play the show. As the DM, what is your tool you absolutely have to have?
I would say, like I said, my big thing is maps or like a discussion, like a either like a paragraph piece on stuff.
Hmm.
Like I have to have some sort of thing that I can relate to the other piece. So my brain is in that piece, right? Even if I'm not like I'll never use the map or I'll never use that picture or anything like that within the whole session.
Hmm.
I know for one, I ran a whole heist mansion piece. That was a couple sessions, and not once did they ever ask me what the outside of the mansion looked like, but I
Hmm.
had to have at least pictures of
Yeah.
the mansion. I had to have pictures of this, and that's my one of my big pieces. I need to have some visual evidence or some sort of visual evidence of these things
Sure.
to put myself into that world, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So
And that,
you
that
need visual attuning.
Yeah, and that's just my own piece, right?
Yeah.
So, and I find it I really struggle when I start struggling on some of the improv pieces when I don't have that. And
Yeah.
that's me personally. I've played with other people that don't need that at all, but that is one of my tools, my major tools to have either pictures or, an array of pictures
Hmm.
of things. Like I said, when I did the luchador orcs. I had a picture of a luchador up just so I could get into that sort of
Yeah, that
uh,
headspace.
headspace or images of these things, right?
Right.
So not once did they ask for one,
Hmm.
but at least then that way is my headspace is in it. Okay, when I'm describing
Well, I feel
you
like
know,
that's a good thing too. If they never ask for
yeah,
more information, you've given
yeah,
enough. As a DM,
yeah,
I'm very text driven. So that's why not sponsored by, but would love to be, Obsidian. I
yeah,
use Obsidian to a ridiculous degree. I've shown all of you have seen my sort of
yeah,
brain cloud that is the world that I have created, and it is massive. I cannot zoom out enough to fit it all on the screen before it gets like super tiny. Like it takes up my entire screen now. It like I said, it's well over 5,000 pages. And when I say pages, that's Obsidian pages, which don't have a bottom. So those pages are
yeah.
really long. So I have no idea how many words it is at this point. But yeah, I can't survive as a DM now with running 8 concurrent
Hmm.
campaigns, plus the one shots, plus the short form campaign, and all of that. I could not survive without a good note taking. And I was using Google Docs and like OneNote, but they're very clunky and like disorganized in my opinion. And the way Obsidian runs like a wiki where I can link stuff together and all of that and the different add-ins they have, I could that's my green M&Ms. That's my tool I have to have.
Yeah.
So let's talk about group dynamics, playing with strangers. So I'm interested to know the difference between how it feels to run a game for like friends versus running or playing in a game with strangers, such as you've done since joining this community.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I haven't ran too many games with like strangers. I've only ran a couple games, two games. Wasn't D&D centric. It was White Wolf,
Mm.
and it is very scary. Like to tell you the truth, like running as a DM and running, I think as a GM, I think they're called GMs in the other one, but
Yeah.
as a GM running with strangers is definitely scary and definitely harder in a sense to gauge people's nuances. When you're playing with friends or playing with relate like people that you know, right? Um, like running games for people that you kind of know where they're going to come at things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, and with at least with strangers, you don't know where they're going to come at things at all. It's very scary at the start, can be really fun and add really interesting, unique experiences because, you know, when you hang out with the same people or interact with the same people, those certain unique experiences sometimes don't get brought up.
Mm.
Running from someone that has a totally different background than you or so far removed from where you are as a person or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that brings those really interesting pieces to it, right? But it is 100% more scary. Like anyone that's jumping in on it, anyone that can just completely jump in a group of strangers and run a game, all power to you because it is definitely a very, very scary
It's nerve
thing.
wracking. It's
It's nerve wracking
absolutely nerve wracking.
for this new campaign that I want to do with the community that here, like that is the biggest piece that I'm scared of is even though I've played probably with most of the people there, it's doing it for people that it isn't, directly involved with me or whatever like
Sure.
that is definitely an interesting experience. They're going to be an interesting experience and it is definitely it's scary. um, Sometimes it goes like at least the two campaigns or two one shots that I ran. Um, uh, One, there was definitely with strangers, you can have some very odd cats
Sure.
coming in. So that is definitely one of those pieces. Now, as a like a player, I really like playing with strangers as a player,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
A
one,
lot of
I'm
those
not.
same dynamics of like you don't know what to expect from your other players, and that makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Like it's not as scary because I'm not the one that's gonna, have to go and move someone back on track, right?
Yeah.
But but it is definitely that I love that fact of, the getting in with like playing a game with the complete strangers because, you never know what's going on. I've started to really like, and this is a great thing that Chris, if you've introduced me, I hadn't played with very many new people,
Mm-hmm.
like new to D&D and tabletop and stuff like that. And it is an extremely interesting thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Like it is extremely interesting to see tabletop games from someone that is so new to it.
Yeah.
Like I never ever never got to play with someone like that. So
Yeah.
um that was
It's
never a thing.
it's a
That
whole
like
new world to them, and
yeah.
it's very simple. Some DMs are very nervous about having new players at the table. It goes one of two ways. Either it's a whole new world to them, and so they're very reserved and shy, and so you don't have to deal with a whole lot of stuff, or it's a whole new world to them, so they just go butt wild. And they're just like,
Yeah.
what can I do? When's he gonna cut me off? When does he is he gonna tell me that I have to stop? And
Yeah.
so they just push the limits. And both of those are fine for me. Now, obviously, I prefer when they go a little wild and they try new things and experience it, and I want them to have a good experience. But even if they're shy and reserved, there's at least one or two players in the group with them that are gonna
Hmm.
go wild, that are gonna be the chaos button pushers and all
Yeah.
of that. And so they get to see it still happen. So,
The thing I love about that too is with the new players too, them coming in on their own as players. And I really love seeing, I didn't know I would love seeing that so much, but seeing someone who started out as a shy character and coming in on their own and playing
Hmm.
tricks on people and building their kind of blending
You're
their
talking about
character.
Polo.
Yeah, but I
We
don't
can
get the same
call him out.
age.
We can call him out. That's Polo. That's
Yeah,
his
yeah.
his growth and development as a brand new
Totally.
player.
It's
It is
amazing.
the perfect
Yeah,
example of
yeah,
what you're talking about. So even if you
yeah.
weren't talking about Polo, I'll bring him up.
100% talking about polo, but
Seeing
uh,
his growth as a player has been heartwarming and
yeah,
affirming to me as
yeah,
someone who loves this game.
yeah.
It shows me that he came in with no expectations, no idea what to expect. He just knew D&D
Mhm.
was there and he wanted to try it. And now, very early on, as you're saying, he was kind of shy. And now that whole hunting lodge session was centered around him just screwing with everybody. Like he was just
Yeah,
having fun. His character
yeah,
was having fun and he himself was having fun. And it was
yeah.
great to see.
And it's awesome, like I said, coming into like we'll talk about like coming into learning about combat and learning what he can do and learning what what to do when role playing and stuff like that and taking those sort of pieces like I said I've been playing forever and most of the time I play with everyone that knows D&D knows oh hey like this is this piece this is this piece you can do
Mm,
this piece right and it's really interesting from that and what I've been really enjoying is that coming from that sort of new player
yeah.
excitement.
But that moment, that was the moment for me where he said, I'm going to cast darkness. I'm going to
Yeah.
put up the darkness around him. That was inside internally. I was jumping for joy because I was like,
I
yes, yeah.
Yeah, for me, for his sort of growth was when he went in and did the we were talking about the Lord Protector and him investigating every single piece and really taking his control of the storyline because
Hmm.
that group has very, very, very good role players in it, like
Yeah.
incredible role players in it. And then him saying like, no, I want this story to be a bit about my story. Like I want to go and take a look at these stuff and do
Hmm.
that stuff and
And
take control
even if
of
it
that.
wasn't, even if it wasn't, I want it to be about my story. Even if it was
Yeah,
just, I'm invested in where this is going. I
that's
want to
exactly
know.
it.
Nobody was
Yeah,
asking the questions he wanted the answers to. So he was like, I'm going to do it
yeah.
myself.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like I said, and this is like I said, the first time I got to play with new players, new stranger players, right?
Hmm.
Is definitely one of those pieces I've played with. Like I said, I've played with a lot of people that know D&D, that know tabletop games, that know come from backgrounds that are like extreme nerd backgrounds, right? So it's interesting to see that sort of switch up of that
So
new
that's
player. Yeah.
that's my favorite part of talking about how does it feel to run games for friends versus games for strangers.
Yeah.
So, as the DM, I know everything that's going to happen for, in essence, like I know what the
Mhm.
outcome of this world or of this potential storyline might be from the time I start writing it. And sure, it changes and shifts, but I
Mhm.
always know more than the players do. So there's no exploration or discovery for me. So for me, the benefit of playing with strangers is I get to explore the players and
Mhm.
see who I'm going to pick out for different things. Like focusing on Rug for what's happening with his whole thing is
Yeah.
because you react and make choices and have certain ways that you do things. And so it's easy
Mhm.
for me. It's like why I keep slinging bad dreams and visions at Ollie is because she has such
Yeah.
visceral reactions as a player to those things. So it's easy to just engage with that. uh, with Polo and his now that he's coming out of his shell, I'm getting to explore and see how he reacts to these different situations. So like the shrine and praying to Druon and all this kind of stuff that happened, that was totally unexpected. And so
Yeah.
it's showing me these pieces of them as players that I get
Mhm.
to have more fun with and explore more of as the DM. Whereas with friends, you feel like you kind of already know, like you said, how everybody's going to react to things. So the fun for me with strangers is getting to figure out who is who in the group.
It's definitely interesting the difference between playing with strangers and playing with close friends. Like I said, it's cool, and as a it's a part of a DM piece that is I haven't touched on very often, but definitely is you have is that DM piece of learning about other people, which is an exciting thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So, um,
I mean, I don't know if it's been obvious or not. I am a nervous wreck because everyone here at some point was a stranger to me. None of my
yeah,
real life friends play in any of my campaigns. And it's why I get so happy when like Matrix or you or James, when they
yeah,
jump over and cross and do these different campaigns and stuff and everything, is because at least if there's three or four new faces, there's at least one or two familiar faces. Like with the
yeah,
Tuesday group, having you and Matrix there was a huge comfort to me because I knew y'all knew what to expect out of me, and I knew what to expect out of you.
yeah.
I thought, and then both of you play completely different characters, like
Yeah.
complete personality shifts.
Yeah. Well, definitely from the characters, things, and that was, and like I said, it was because of the new players, the idea of having new players. I thought, oh crap, I'll have to play this completely outgoing, different character, right?
Yeah,
Um, but I don't in that group. The new players just picked it up within
ran
seconds
with it.
and ran with it. It's that is such a, and I've said this before, and if they're watching this, it's such an amazing thing to see with that group is just a incredible. They've become incredible players
Hmm.
so
So
quickly,
quickly.
right?
They truly
Yeah,
were like a duck to water.
yeah,
Like all
yeah,
all of the new players in that Tuesday group were like session zero. They were like, yeah, we don't know what to do, what to expect. We'll be probably pretty reserved at first. And by halfway through the first session, they were in it and they were mixing it up. And so I was like, this is a good sign. And then by session two, the shenaniganry was already starting.
yeah,
And I was like, this is great. This is a good sign because
yeah,
my fear was with you and Matrix coming over that y'all would have to carry a lot of it
mhm,
until they got more comfortable, and it just didn't happen. Wasn't necessary because they
yeah,
just took right to it. And I love all of my groups. I have been blessed in recent DMing experiences since doing starting this Discord to have really good groups. They're all really
yeah,
really good. We don't have any bad groups so far. Um,
yeah.
so,
And surprisingly enough, we have not had any difficult players,
mm,
and like
I,
so
I
that
well,
I have noticed, like
right.
like
We finally
my group
had,
that I play with.
yeah, we finally had our first one today. Actually, the day
Yes,
of recording of this,
yeah,
I had to kick someone out of the server for making some inappropriate comments. And that's all I'll say about that. But that was I just mentioned this to some people, and this is a good topic too.
yeah,
I don't know if it's on the list of questions that I kind of preface this with, but dealing with problem players
yeah,
and situations and drama like that. Um, I was just talking about this the other day that I'm leery. It's why I don't have the Discord link on any of the
mhm,
YouTube videos. It's why I'm not putting it out there publicly yet because I'm very leery about just letting anyone come in without being
mhm,
screened or being known by someone else. So you inviting people to play, Austin inviting people to play, things like that. In essence, y'all are kind of vouching for them,
yeah.
right? Like I'm not staking your reputation on how they act, but I am giving them the benefit of the doubt because you know
This,
them and you
yeah,
invited them. This
this,
person
hey,
kind of came from nowhere. Yeah. Because
like,
we
yeah,
just had this whole conversation about how great this community has been so far,
yeah,
but it truly only takes like one sour drop to ruin the whole bucket.
yeah.
And so
And then
I wanted to weed that out immediately.
when we get on talk about difficult players, I think your biggest thing with difficult players is don't deal with difficult players, right?
Hmm.
There's a level of difficult player that you can deal with, right? And if they're getting to the point that they're too difficult to play with, then don't play with them, right?
Yeah.
you know it's a lot harder with close friends, right? You have that one close friend that is a bit of a difficult player to play with, and maybe that's the time you take him aside, take her or him or they aside,
Hmm.
and you have those sort of conversations with them and say, hey, is there anything we can work this out or anything like that? But if you're playing with strangers, and I've seen it when I when in like open forum games, right?
Yeah.
Those difficult players, it's maybe time to stop and say, hey, no, I
Yeah.
can't play with you, right? So because it ruins the magic for
Absolutely.
everyone else, right?
Absolutely. Look, that's my number one thing. I'm all about your freedom of speech. This is, sorry for you, but this is America. Um, you can have your freedom of speech. My Discord server is based in America. So, yes, freedom of speech applies. However, it is my server. And in
Yeah,
my server, I don't tolerate political, religious, sexual preference, derogatory remarks about any of those. We just don't talk about it. I don't care whose side you're on. I don't care if you're on the same side as me or a different side as me. This is a safe place for gaming. It is a safe
yeah,
place for people to come and talk about the game, enjoy the game, share their art, share their hobbies, whatever that surround the game. We don't need, this is our, specifically me, it is my escape from the horrors of reality, whatever they might be that go on around me. I don't want to bring reality into my imaginary place.
yeah,
So we're just not going to do it. So, yes, you have the right to have your opinion. You do not have the right to walk in my house and scream your opinion at me.
yeah. As a DM too, you're always kind of scared that you're gonna offend someone on by telling them like, hey,
Yeah.
no. But you got to be comfortable DMing, right? So if they're going off the rockers on certain things that are being super difficult, I know I have he might eventually watch this, and I'd laugh if he does. I have a friend of mine who metagames
Everything.
like everything, like everything, metagames 100% all the time. And I had to take him aside, and he's a close friend of mine, and say, hey, you can't you can't metagame the whole game. Like you gotta play your character and you
Hmm.
gotta play with other people and you can't be, Drit Stewarden and do 20 backflips and, you know,
Yeah.
have a tiger, right? So I haven't read the books in a long time, so don't say I'm gonna have someone I
Yeah.
think it was
Yeah.
a panther actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
But
it's it's a hard thing to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Admittedly, is have those kinds of conversations to say, look, you as the player may know what's going on, but you as the character does not,
yeah,
and not everybody can separate from that mindset of being like
yeah.
my character knows what my player brain knows. It's hard for
Hmm.
some people to separate that for sure. And so
Yeah,
having those conversations, yeah, you're right. It's scary sometimes as a DM. It can feel
yeah,
difficult to, because it's the way I see it as a DM. First and foremost, you are a inclusive member in the storytelling experience.
yeah,
Secondly, you're a referee.
yeah.
And so sometimes the referee side has to come out and put a stop to things, call a flag on the play, you know, invoke a penalty. There are things that sometimes have to happen, and so that's just the way that goes. I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. It can be scary, but at the same time,
Yeah,
like you said, you have to be able to do it as the DM.
yeah. And sometimes it's easier, like it is easier with people. Some people are very reasonable. It's like anything in this world. Anyone that's worked service industry, some
Yeah.
people are incredibly easy to deal with, and some people are not. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, if they're making your game miserable as a DM, then you're not having fun playing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
half the thing, right? You're playing with your character players, but at the same time, you have to have fun playing the game also, right? Because it's pretty crappy if you're gonna have to go through it. I haven't really had to deal with very many difficult people, other than a few sort of like logistically difficult people. Um,
Sorry.
but I've dealt with, I've you know been around games enough times to have over here or have to come in on stuff where there is difficult players and they make I think I'll go use a time I was playing with a group of like a venture league, and one of the guys was overly sexual the whole time, right?
Mm.
And the DM had to gracefully say, hey, no, like we're not going to seduce everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Makes me uncomfortable. it was a female DM, right? And it was a male player, an overly suggestively male player, right? And had to gracefully say, "Hey, no, we're not going to do that. You know, you can roll for seduction if that's what you want to do, but we're not going to go and RP out every instant,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, every detail, right?
right.
So something
Well,
we're not going to do, and
it's like our last session for Monday with Varric.
yeah,
It's generally how I handle that stuff. He was like, I want to approach what's his name, and I want to try
mhm,
to see if I can flirt with him. And I was like, great. And we went through the flirtation process, and he
yeah,
succeeded. And I was like, cool. Y'all go off. Roll a performance check.
mhm,
That's that.
yeah,
That's the end. We're done with that scenario now. You roll a performance check. That'll tell you how well you did or whatever, and your own imagination can take it from there. And he
yeah,
didn't do anything wrong. He handled that whole situation very, very
yeah,
professionally and very amazingly. And it was his first time that his character and him as a player had opened up in that sort of way to
yeah,
really interact with someone specifically like that that wasn't just like getting information. Like
yeah,
he actually showed like, oh, we're out of the city, we're out of the bad situations, we're out of the woods, we're in this town. Varric's gonna open up a little bit. And it
yeah,
was nice to see that. It was really nice to see that. And we didn't have to make it creepy and weird. And he didn't want
yeah,
to. So that's good. But like you're saying, you get those situations where people want to take it too far. So knowing and respecting people's boundaries, and if you don't know, like in the situation you were talking about with that guy, he obviously didn't know the DM's boundaries, so he should
yeah,
have just given that grace area
yeah,
out of respect until such time as he could figure out what the boundaries were, instead of just going full bore from the beginning.
yeah. And there's, like I said, there's ways to do it gracefully, but in the end, like I said, if it's ruining your game or making you feel uncomfortable, don't go with it.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of other people to play with
Hmm.
that are not like that. Stop the game.
And for that
Mhm.
player,
Yeah.
there are hundreds of other players that have the
There's,
same types of mindset and mentality that
yeah,
line up with that, and so they can find a
yeah,
better group they gel with.
yeah. So there is things, it is definitely harder. And like I said, I've played with close friends that are difficult, more difficult players to play with, mostly logistically, not as a DM, right?
Yeah.
So, and those are the times you need to take them aside and say, hey, and hopefully they are understanding and there's a graceful way to do it,
Yeah.
right? But it is, like I said, for new DMs, that is scary, right? It's something that I'm scared about with playing with eventually DMing again, right?
Yeah.
Is definitely DMing for strangers is I'm scared that I'm gonna get a difficult player like that,
Hmm.
either logistically or just a straight difficult character.
And to me, there's a very small amount of things that I don't want to say judge because that's a bad term, but I can't think of another
Mhm.
term to apply to it, but that allows me to create an idea of how good or how much improvement needs to be made by a DM. If I am a
Yeah.
player in a game and there is a player that is clearly causing problems for the other players and for the DM or for the DM,
Mhm.
and the DM does nothing to address it, like if I'm a player at a table and this player to my right is visibly and noticeably bothered by the actions that this player on my left is taking, if the DM hasn't stepped in to try to create an even ground and a compromise, then in my mind, that's a DM that needs improvement.
Mhm.
A good DM doesn't have to do voices or be remarkable at writing story or be able to detail out in words the perfect environment like description.
Mhm.
A good DM creates a safe place for their players and creates a fun environment for their players to
Mhm.
enjoy the game. If you can do that, you're automatically a good DM in my book. I can work with
Yeah.
you if you're not good with words or if you stumble over trying to figure out an improv moment. Those don't
Yeah.
bother me. That doesn't make you a bad DM. A bad DM to me, and I hate saying bad DM, a DM that needs improvement, in my
Mhm.
opinion, is one that does not create that safe and fun environment for their players.
Yeah.
So,
I do One thing I really do like about this community on creating like safe spaces and stuff like that is like we talked about difficult players, right? So like and like getting into like good DMing and stuff like that is creating, you said creating that safe space, right? And one thing I like about this community is the fact that we keep it neutral, right?
Hmm.
So everything is neutral, right? And you in your session zeros, and I will talk you up for give you a bit of a big head. We we used to say in your session zero, you used to say, hey, there's some hard lines here. We don't go into the deep, you know, deep murder hobo sort of stuff. We don't go into the deep sexual sort of stuff. There's other places for that, everything like that. I think that really does help creating those safe spaces for
Hmm.
everyone to enjoy themselves. Because when we get into those other spaces, and there is places to get into those spaces if people want to play that way,
Yeah.
right? Um, then that really helps. And it, like I said, I enjoy playing a game with other people when I don't have to worry about that as a player, at least, right? So
Yep.
it's something that, like, one thing I've learned from both you and Phil and a few of the other people that have done session zeros that have been that's part of this community is like setting that example right away. These are the things, hard lines of this is what we're not going to do and this is
Right.
what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a really good way to create that safe environment for people. Yeah.
I think that safety tools are not a bad thing. They're yet another tool to set expectations. My players
Hmm.
should know the tone of the game that they're going to get. My players should know a little bit enough about me to be comfortable going into the early sessions to know kind of how I'm going to run the game. And they should also know that when they come here, they're not going to be harassed or talked down to or belittled or made to feel inferior because of their views or their beliefs. We just keep all of that out of it. Period.
Yeah. And that's a big thing is like I said, we went back to talk about difference between playing with strangers and playing with close friends, right?
Mm.
At least with the close friends, you're all in the same mentality, right? Usually same political statements, stuff like that. But when playing with strangers, you know, you go back to this is a fantasy game about escapism into a fantasy world,
Right.
right? So I don't want the real world to come into my fantasy world
Absolutely.
unless it's like, homaging to, right?
Yeah.
But that, and I believe that's a
Even
huge,
then, even then it's touchy.
definitely playing with strangers is that whole piece, right? So,
Yeah, just
yeah,
avoid it if you can.
we avoided with playing with strangers, even as, like I said, as a player too. Like I said, I try to make my characters as neutrally as possible
Hmm.
so I don't have that problem as conflicting with other people's
Hmm.
characters, right? So,
So, what do you look for when forming or joining a new group, either as a DM or a player? Like if you get invited to DM for a new group, or if you start playing, like when you join this community and start playing for a new group,
mhm.
what do you look for in a group, like in the dynamics?
Yeah, it's two different things too, right? For DMing, definitely because I've DM'd a lot for just close friends and stuff like that. Definitely what I look for is people that know or have some idea of what it's like to be a player or a DM, right? Because like I said, I've DM'd a lot for my close friends and throughout many years of DMing things for close friends, right?
Hmm.
That's sort of that easiness of getting into the DMing and stuff like that. And then for a player, I really, really look for that sort of ease of playing with them.
Mm.
People that are able to take other people's ideas and go and flow and stuff and give everyone their own individual time,
Yeah.
right? Um, there's definitely in our community, and I think we've talked up our community a lot,
Yeah.
but definitely there's some really good players in this community, right? So,
Yes.
and like I said, that makes it that's what I look for with playing with other people in this community is those that ease of getting in, that giving other
Mhm.
people their own time and giving other people influence to role play off of them,
Yeah.
right? So, and to, to put in those little make create interesting characters on top of, giving other people that time to role play off those interesting characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no
Absolutely.
one like, man, like I'll go throw my buddy under the bus again because he's awesome for this. Because he's just sometimes that he's a difficult player to play with too.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea of like metagaming and being, Trit Stewart in with his, I'm gonna say Panther now because things, and doing the backflips off of things and taking over the story. Yeah, it's really fun for you as a player, yourself as a player, right? But as a player to play with you, right,
Mm-hmm.
is you're like, oh my God, okay, I get it, right? So
Making the
it
transition from being a DM early on to now in this community being a player and going back to a DM. How
yeah,
has they affected each other?
I really have to think as being a DM for a while has made me a better player in the sense that the idea of like those moments where the DM or someone is struggling or something like that, those improv moments where you know the stuff needs to get off the feet or people need to move a certain direction or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, to be able to be like, okay, this is the period when some of the characters need to pick it up or make a suggestion or
Yeah.
something like that, to put in those little nuggets to be like, hey, maybe we should open that door, right? Or hey, I'm gonna just go and put the amulet on the
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe
Right?
maybe I should.
Yeah, maybe I should, right? Or those little inklings to get the story moving, to moving in certain directions, or to get other people to get into the story. I think that's what made me really much better because now I get this, I can see those moments, right?
Mm.
But as a going from a player and never seeing those moments as a DM when you're sitting there as a DM and goes, and you're just sitting there and you're like, yeah, and you put the amulet on that, and
Mm.
you could put the amulet on this thing, and you're sitting there going, well, or you could put in the password, and then everyone's sitting there talking about 60 different passwords and stuff like that, and then you're like, I kind of wish just a character would try it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Like the
yeah.
the the gate, the gate on the Tuesday campaign with going down into
Oh,
the
I didn't
mines.
even think about that one.
you
Yeah,
you
sorry. Yeah,
kind you kind of did that in that moment. They were all
yeah,
like, maybe it's up, down, left, right. Maybe it goes left
yeah.
to right and then up to down. And you were like, I'm just gonna flip the first two panels and I'm gonna see what happens. And I was like,
Yeah,
it lights up, and you were like, oh, okay, something's happening. Here we go. All right. And so from there, they were all sort of treading water in that moment of trying to figure out the
yeah.
first move to make. Once you made the first move,
Mhm.
then the wheels started turning
Yeah,
and they just started making moves. So sometimes you're right. Like being a DM helps you as a
mhm,
player identify when the group you're playing with needs that kind of extra push right there in that moment.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Also, also has made me know when I can derail
Yeah,
a piece, and that sometimes is just as fun. And I feel sorry for any DM that I do it to.
I don't.
But sometimes it's just as fun to just know that by you saying that one thing or doing that one thing, you've derailed a little bit of what they have 2 pages of prep work doing.
I
And it is fun, and as a DM, I loved it. Like I
yeah,
love when people do that. So don't
yeah.
get me wrong, like the things, but it is definitely some of the times is fun
I
when you
was gonna
do it.
s-
And you,
I was gonna
yeah,
say, like, as a DM, you have to have a certain love for like storytelling or stories that play out, and there's something not as fun about knowing the outcomes of
yeah,
any possible situation. Because you, as the DM, that's your role, is you need to know what the reactions are going to be to any choice that's
yeah,
made. Even if you don't know it beforehand, you have to be able to make it up. So those moments that you're talking about, the derailing moments, I
mhm,
feel like if you as a DM don't enjoy those because it's a chance for you to explore something you had not thought about, you had not
yeah,
seen before, or had not accounted for, then that's those are the moments when it's just as fun for you as it is for your players to see where it goes. So I appreciate those moments, um, whether they're planned,
oh yeah,
like having a traitor rat, literally, Not like
Yeah.
a rat isn't a derogatory term, but a ratkin who's a traitor the whole time and the players never know, or if it's just something off the cuff in the moment. Like,
Mhm.
oh, the sprite familiar is taking a bath in the pot of water. I'm going to set it on fire. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to heat up the pot of water. Um, any of those things, whether it's planned or off the cuff, they just make for such an exciting time for the players and for me as the DM. So I appreciate that.
I think really as playing as a DM, going to a player too, helps with backstory, to tell you the truth,
Mm,
right? Both on both ends too, right? Helps on both. And this is where I find like now that I've DM'd a little bit and then came to a player, knowing when I want to build a huge backstory and knowing when I want to build a little backstory,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So is that's that two pieces on that things. There are some really good players out there, and honestly, like I said, there's some really good players that know really well on what they do, but knowing when like, oh, I need to build a 6 page backstory on this person, or it's like I said, I can play a character in a one shot that is, you know,
One
3 line.
paragraph. Yep.
Yeah. So, mhm.
So here's a three-parter real quick, and then we'll do our final section here. So,
Mhm.
what has been your most memorable moment as a DM? And then what's your favorite kind of situation to design, like combat, a social, puzzles, a heist?
Yeah.
And in both of those, or at least in the second one for sure, how do you kind of put your own stamp, your own creative stamp on that? So the first one is what's been your most memorable moment as a DM, if you had to pick one?
And I go back to and like all the times that I've DM'd and everything that, and one of my most like memorable times as a DM, and it had nothing to do with the game itself, is running. I ran a whole game. I was away, and I ran a whole game just theater of the mind, um, and it was only audio theater of the mind sort of piece, and that was really fun to kind of get back
Mm,
at to like the almost like the roots of playing D&D, where it was all just people rolling dice.
mm-hmm.
That's it. There was no paper, no nothing, just someone talking and going through it. I thought that was really really fun
Yeah.
to do. That was one of my favorite moments as a DM, like a DM. My like absolute favorite moment as like one of the things is like they my characters beat up a satyr, um, and then I had to roll they're on a heist piece,
Hmm.
like a heist quest, and they beat up this satyr, like, and it was just a random roll. And then I said, you know what, I'm gonna have fun with this. I'm gonna have them roll like a D100, and if they get like these three numbers, then they end up getting like the tickets to the ball that they're supposed to be heisting, right?
Oh, wow.
And they ended up getting the tickets
Of
to
course.
it.
Of course.
Yeah. And but then they never used the tickets. So I think that was one of my like favorite moments where
Hmm.
it was like they went through this whole big heist piece, everything like that, and then they got to the end and got back to the tavern, and they were like pulling out all their stuff and they were looking over through their inventory, and then one of the guys that I was playing with, uh, she was like, "Oh, what were these tickets for?" And I was like, "Hey, do a perception check on like reading the piece, right?" And they're like, "Oh yeah," and they did it wasn't very high DC, right? And they go, "I'm like, oh yeah, that was the tickets to the ball." So they went through this whole big heist piece where they're like escaping blink dogs and scaling walls and
They
running
could have
away
they
from
could have just walked through
noble,
the front door.
and they could have just walked through the front door at the whole time. And I was like, that is such a perfect sort of like D&D
Moment.
moment,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
for sure.
where it's like I had the key to the door all along,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, I love that. I love that whole piece about that. And honestly, like I said, them doing the whole heist piece was like awesome and really fun to play out and stuff like that. But I loved it even more because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like they could pull the tickets out at any time,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, there and of course I was giving them little hints too,
Oh yeah,
like
you try.
yeah,
You try.
yeah, I'm like yeah, the blink dogs don't react to you, right? Like they're not reacting to you, and they're like, oh okay. I'm like, well, I guess, because we've thrown that meat, they're just going after the meat. I'm like, no, they're not touching the meat at all, right? And they're like, oh, okay. And then one of
It's
my characters is like,
it's almost
I
like you
throw,
have something in your pocket. Like
and one of my characters is like, I throw a stick at him, and I'm like, well, okay, now they notice you,
yeah. Now
yeah,
they're like, "What's
yeah,
up?" Um,
yeah,
that's
and
terrific.
yeah, it's all those little pieces and stuff like that. I and my favorite is more of the role playing aspects of the
Hmm.
game. Like I like putting situations where people have to talk to people
Hmm.
and they have to decide on what they want to do or what they not want to do, right? I'm not a heavy combat guy. I tend to think combat's fairly boring. I
Hmm.
like as a player, there's sometimes I like playing combat
Hmm.
mostly because I like that thinking piece of it, but
So
pieces
is
that
that sort of forcing that decision? Is that your stamp? Is it like what's your stamp that you put on it?
I Yeah, I like so the stamp, at least what I've been doing is my stamp is the like undertone characters that are not exactly what they're supposed to be,
Okay.
right? And that's my stamp on a lot of my things. Like I said, I ran a homebrew piece, and they didn't know at the time that they were in a Fey realm,
Hmm.
and that was the things there. Charles the bartender was like a Fey lord, and so they ended up
It's
like
always the bartender.
halfway through the campaign, they were like halfway through the homebrew, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna start asking Charles more questions," and then I said, "Okay, roll a DC for insight." Um, and it's going to be a high DC, and they were like, oh, okay, magically they get the high DC. They've been playing for a while, so you know they get this magical high DC, and I'm like, well, you guys have been here before. You, the characters, like the players, have known you've been here before, but you guys have an odd feeling that you've been here a long time, like an
Yeah,
extremely long time,
because
right?
time's real wonky in the Fey realm.
Yeah, so and that's the thing is they're like, "Oh my goodness, like have we been waking up for the last like every single time we have a one shot,
Hmm.
have we been waking up newly every single time?" And I was like, "Yeah, every one shot like everything that you have done for these people, you have continued to wake up and do it again and again and again, right?" So,
It's
yeah.
such an awesome concept. Like when you first
Mm,
told me about that, I was like, it's crazy.
yeah,
And for the video, I'm not just swatting at random things like this. There was a little bug that was flying around, and
yeah.
I was trying to get it out of my face, and so just randomly, I was just like doing this on camera. Um,
Yeah, so if you play in
I
the
love it.
campaign that I'm going to run, that there's going to be characters that don't seem to be, that are not going to be exactly who you think they are, right?
Right.
And I love having that stamp of like
Hmm.
everyone is, they're not exactly who you think they are,
Yeah.
right? So, you
That's
know,
I love it. I love it. It
yeah,
keeps the players on their toes too.
yeah,
So there's no like lulling off or like sleeping on a certain character. It's great. I love it.
yeah,
But I think my stamp is what I tell everybody at session zero, and so far none of the campaigns have believed it until it's actually happened. But it's that
yeah.
I don't say anything by accident. I just don't.
Hmm.
If I say it, if I'm putting it out there in a narration or a description or telling you about the effects of something,
Hmm.
everything is being said for a purpose. There's some meaning behind everything, small or big. Like with the Tuesday campaign,
Yeah,
with Starnick, when I said like you slash down on this zombie like thrall, and as it starts to fall, it tries to stop itself by catching your arm,
Yeah.
and then it fell to the ground. It died. It had its last words, ominous, foreshadowing, and everybody was so focused on the foreshadowing, nobody paid attention to this thing that's holding on to his arm. And then the next session, he's cursed, and
Yeah.
there's a dark, mark that's spreading on the area where he was touched by the thrall. I don't say anything by accident, so that's my stamp.
New DMs too, and this is what we put this out to new DMs, and this is what I found with DMing, with me DMing, is add your stamps to it. Add what you
Hmm.
like to it, because most likely it's something that your players are going to like too. If
Hmm.
you like to have unicorns in every single tavern in there, or you really like cats and it's going to be there's a cat cafe, or there's a cat, or there's a talking cat, or
Yep,
anything like that
Mr.
in it,
Tibbles.
and that's your stamp and that's what you like to have as your thing,
Hmm.
it will make something different in your campaigns or
Yeah.
your one shots or your things, and throw it in on a precursor piece, right?
Hmm.
Like a pre-made piece, because it will add something different and the players are going to like it, right? So, because it's something new and different, especially if they're players like me or players like a lot of people that have played lots of D&D before,
Yeah.
and we're going to be like, "Holy crap, that's awesome. Like I love the fact that I can ride a unicorn,
Yep.
right?"
Make
Or
it your
that's I
own.
love the yeah, love the fact that you have a cat in every single piece, and if you can add that all these cats talk to each other throughout this thing, like add those pieces that you can your
Oh.
things because
All right, so I'm going to finish this out with one last question for you.
hmm
How do you define a successful session or campaign? Like, what is your benchmark of success?
I think really is that your players coming up to you afterwards and saying, "Hey, when is the next game?"
Yeah.
Right? When is that next game? Hey, or they'll message you halfway through. And that's what I loved with like my personal friends that I played with and a few like other friends that I've done things for, is they'll message you afterwards and say, "Hey, like when are we playing next? I want to know when we're playing next," because,
Yeah.
that means that they really enjoyed it, right? So either
Absolutely.
they enjoyed your direction or they enjoyed the other players that they've
Hmm.
been playing with, but you're directly involved with that sort of that guiding piece and that the facilitating piece, and I think that is the best
Yeah.
compliment you can get as a DM. Just personally, I don't know if anyone else, but personally, is having someone come up to you afterwards and being like, "Hey, when are we playing next? I'm
Yeah.
really excited to play next." Yeah.
Yeah. That's always the best feeling is
Mhm.
after the sessions getting those follow-on messages of like, "Hey, can we go ahead and schedule the next one?" Or, "Hey, it was a really great session night. I loved it." And then for me, with having so many newer players, it's the moments like Polo and Starnik
Mhm.
and Sivana and,
Mhm.
newer or brand new players
Mhm.
that all of a sudden just come out of their shell and make some choice.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a really empowering moment for me as a DM. I feel proud of that moment, not because it's anything that I did other than creating a place that was comfortable and safe enough for them to feel like they could be that vulnerable, to come out of
Mhm.
their shell and really play that character. So those are my big moments. So, well, Quinn, I thank you so much for being here and
Yeah.
talking with me. It's always fun to get another person's perspective, especially someone with that amount of experience and that amount of time into the tabletop community, and not just D&D but other games as well. All of it. I really appreciate you being here and sharing with me. And yeah, I can't wait for our next sessions playing, and I can't wait for your campaign to kick off. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I really enjoy talking about this. So yeah.
Awesome. All right.